It's horrible what they did to her.
No eyewitnesses, no forensic evidence, no physical evidence whatsoever connecting James Dailey to the crime.
When I went to visit him, he didn't know me. I told him all I want is the truth. He got emotional. He even shed a tear, and he told me he cannot die for something that I did. He told me he would come over here and tell the truth.
Hold on a second, Counselor. Are you going to be a witness in this case? Because it sounds like you're testifying now.
It has been 34 years since a Tampa Bay teenager was murdered. Shelly Boggio's murder is known as one of the most violent crimes in Pinellas County's history. 2 men were convicted of her murder, but only one of them is sitting on death row, James Dailey. 10 News reporter Liz Crawford talked to Dailey's attorney, who says his client is innocent.
There's overwhelming evidence of his innocence.
Josh Dubin works for the Innocence Project. He's representing James Dailey, who's sitting on Florida's death row. He met Dailey Tuesday.
It was somber and it was emotional, and yet there's this interesting resilience and flicker of hope that the governor will listen and that the clemency board will listen.
Dailey and his friend Jack Percy were found guilty for the 1985 murder of 14-year-old Shelly Boggio. She was beaten, choked, stabbed more than 30 times, and held underwater until she drowned. 10 News spoke to the man who found her body in 1985.
I really didn't know for sure until the police, the officers, patrolmen went over there. And then when the body was pulled up on the bank, you could see blood coming from the neck.
Was the body clothed?
No.
Pearcy was sentenced to life in prison. Dailey, who is now 73 years old, was sentenced to death. But now, 3 decades later, Pearcy admits he acted alone in killing Boggio.
He has said in no uncertain terms, in a sworn affidavit, James Dailey had nothing to do with this.
But he didn't say that in 1985, 86, 87.
Correct. This didn't happen until a few years ago that he finally came clean.
Boggio's family doesn't buy it. Her cousin, Andrea Boggio, plans on traveling from Michigan to Florida if and when Dailey is executed.
It needs to end. We need justice. Her life needed to matter. She was only 14.
There was no eyewitnesses.
No eyewitnesses, no forensic evidence, no physical evidence whatsoever connecting James Dailey to the crime.
It was brutal. It was a brutal attack. She didn't have a chance to do anything with her life.
Now to an update in a First Coast News investigation into a murder case dating back to 1985. For 32 years, James Dailey has been on Florida's death row for a crime he says he did not commit. The 73-year-old Vietnam veteran was granted a delay in his execution when his attorneys presented new evidence back in October. But that delay just expired. On your side, Shelby Danielson has new details tonight as his fate could be decided any day now.
James Dailey is convicted for the murder of 14-year-old Shelly Boggio. However, another man has come forward saying he alone is the killer. The question now, will that man's confession be enough to turn this case around?
Nobody forgot. Nobody's going to forget.
Andrea Boggio is the cousin of murder victim Shelly Boggio. She made her feelings known to us back in October when Governor DeSantis had just issued a stay in execution for James Dailey to allow his newly appointed attorneys more time with the case.
It's not fair that this guy keeps getting chances.
She believed Dailey was guilty then, and she still believes that now, despite new evidence entered into court by Dailey's attorneys. According to court records, Dailey's attorney visited inmate Jack Percy at the Sumter Correctional Institution. Pearcy was also found guilty of Shelly Boggio's murder, but he was given life in prison instead of death. He has admitted to being the sole killer before. But on December 18th, he voluntarily signed another declaration claiming that he alone killed the young girl and that Dailey was not even involved. He elaborates in a statement that says in part, quote, Dailey was back at the house when I drove Shelly Boggio to the place where I ultimately killed her. Organizations like the Innocence Project, Floridians for Alternatives to the Death Penalty and Catholic dioceses across the state have come out in support of Dailey.
I believe he's innocent based on everything that I've been able to experience and to read. How are we going to be at peace if we have killed an innocent man?
Meanwhile, Andrea Boggio says the new developments have only caused her family more pain. She tells us, quote, "There is already so much loss. We are absolutely disgusted that this is still going on, and we are just ashamed of the state of Florida." The governor will either assign this case to a clemency board so they can review the 100 pages of new evidence, or he will assign a date for Dailey's execution.
It has been more than 3 decades since a Battle Creek teenager was brutally murdered in Florida. Now her killer may finally be executed.
A relative of the victim who still lives in Battle Creek is hoping the family's long-awaited justice is finally coming.
13 on your side's Brent Ashcroft has been following this controversial case. Recently spoke with that family member here in Michigan. He joins us now with more. Brent.
Shelly Boggio grew up in Battle Creek. She was only 14 when she died in 1985. 2 men were tried, convicted, sentenced, and imprisoned for killing her. One of them received the death penalty for it. But new evidence in the case is sparking attorneys to fight for exoneration, something a Boggio family member here in Michigan says would be an unconscionable development to a tragedy that's consumed her whole life.
34 years. That's all of my adult life.
The execution chamber, Florida State Prison.
We all thought that it would happen a lot sooner.
Andrea Boggio plans to fight through her fear.
I have never stepped foot in the state of Florida because I'm afraid I'm going to die.
Occupy one of these seats.
It's hurt too many people.
And watch.
It's not like he just hurt her, he murdered her.
As James Dailey is put to death for killing her cousin Shelly.
Her life needed to matter.
Shelly Boggio and her family moved from Battle Creek to Kenneth City, Florida in 1984. A year later, she found herself in the wrong place with the wrong people.
It's horrible what they did to her.
Her mutilated body was found along Indian Rocks Beach.
They stabbed her 31 times and drowned her.
Witnesses said Shelly was with 2 men that night, James Dailey and Jack Percy.
She was seen in a bar with them.
A knife belonging to Pearcy was found near Boggio's body, but when questioned by authorities, Pearcy implicated Dailey. Both men were tried and convicted of first-degree murder. Pearcy was sentenced to life. Dailey got death. No physical evidence or eyewitness testimony linked Dailey to the crime, but statements from 3 jailhouse informants did. He's been on Florida's death row since 1987. 2 years ago, new evidence surfaced that Dailey's attorneys say casts doubt on his guilt. A signed affidavit from Pearcy saying he alone was responsible for Shelly's murder. But when he testified in court about it, Pearcy invoked the 5th Amendment.
How are we going to be at peace if we have killed an innocent man?
This development triggered some Florida groups to call for Dailey's exoneration.
I believe he's innocent based on everything that I've been able to experience and to read. But because I am a death row minister, I can't talk about that or analyze it, but I believe it.
There is something about this story that calls a more careful review.
Florida's governor signed Dailey's death warrant in September. Dailey immediately filed an appeal, which was later rejected by the Florida Supreme Court. His execution was scheduled for November 7th, but Dailey was awarded a temporary stay until December 30th because federal law allows 90 days for his new legal team to review the case.
It's not fair that this guy keeps getting chances.
The burden of waiting has fallen on Andrea.
It just keeps coming back.
And 3 of Shelly's half-sisters, because everybody from Shelly's immediate family is gone.
It's up to us members that are left to do this for them.
Is the state of Florida about to put an innocent man to death?
This is a gratuitous killing. It's not going to bring anybody back to life.
Will the Boggio family get what they believe is justice for Shelly?
He committed it.
If Dailey is finally strapped to this,
I don't have any pity for him at all, and I won't.
Andrea plans to travel from Battle Creek and be here to witness their 34-year nightmare,
an eye for an eye,
end.
Shelly isn't forgotten.
James Dailey's attorneys have until December 30th to make their appeals in court. They're trying to request a new trial so they can enter the new evidence, which includes witness testimony and Jack Percy's affidavit. Meantime, Andrea will continue to wait and hope that justice will ultimately come for Shelly and the few remaining members of the Boggio family.
Governor Ron DeSantis has signed a death warrant tonight for James Dailey. He was convicted of killing Shelly Boggio in 1985 near St. Petersburg after picking up the 14-year-old and her sister. That execution is set for November 7th at the Florida State Prison.
The first time I met with him, when I said to him, I would like the truth, and that's what I want.
December 18th, right?
December 18th, I'm sorry. He told me on the first occasion and on the second occasion, please make sure my family's not there. I said, why, Mr. Pearcy? He said, I don't want to admit to this in front of them.
Okay.
He was emotional when he said it to me. He said it to me again in January, and I told him, I can't control that. Now, she is listed as a witness, his mother. I don't know if it's appropriate to have her in the courtroom as a witness.
I was going to say you could invoke the rule, and that would exclude her from the courtroom. It would exclude everybody else. However, I'm trying to figure out if it would help or if it would hurt. State, you know, if it would help or if it would hurt. Anybody have any input over there? Sir. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, ma'am. You're here, and it's your son. If you want to add something, that's fine. I've got great ears, so I can hear you from back there. But let's make it easier for my court reporter, if you don't mind coming up, just so that I can ask. As far as we'll assist you. Oh, they rebooted? Hey, look at this.
Welcome to Open Voice Audio Services.
I just got the phone.
Please enter your conference room number followed by the pound or hash sign.
See, I got the phone working.
Conference room number accepted. If you are the organizer, press the star key now. Otherwise, please enter your PIN followed by the pound or hash.
Sorry, ma'am, I'm doing the phone thing. It misfired.
Your organizer PIN is not valid. You entered 248024. Please try again. Please enter your PIN followed by the pound or hash sign. Please record your name after the beep, followed by the pound or hash sign.
Pat Syracuse.
For a menu of available commands, press *1. There are 3 participants in the conference.
Great, if you could sound off and identify yourselves. Pat Syracuse.
Has joined the conference.
Is there anybody for Mr. Dailey on the call?
Kate Oppenheimer for Mr. Dailey.
Anybody else?
I didn't hear her.
Kate Oppenheimer for Mr. Dailey.
Sid, Your Honor.
Oh, Sid?
Yes, sir.
Sid Oppenheimer. Good morning, Ms. Oppenheimer. You've joined our program already in progress and present at the...
Thank you, Your Honor.
No problem. Present at the podium is Mr. Pearcy's mother, and I'm about to talk to her about how I might convince Mr. Pearcy to participate in the hearing today. Ma'am. Good morning, ma'am.
Oh, great. My name is Sally Simon. I am Jack Percy's mother. Jack does know that I'm here today.
Okay.
He wishes my husband and I to be here.
Okay.
We are in close contact with him. I wish to clarify the thing of that telephone call that has been discussed here. It was in my paper on 2 days after Christmas, and Jack had not told me of the situation. So naturally, when I saw it in the newspaper without hearing it from Jack first, I was upset. So I think that explains the telephone call. And if you think of a mother whose son has been in prison all of these years, and then I see something like that in the newspaper. So I was upset, and I absolutely admit that.
I understand,
But-
and nobody faults you for
Okay,
that.
all right.
Just so that you
Well,
know.
I can take that, But
So
my son and I are very close. I know that my son will tell the truth here today.
Okay.
That
Now,
is clarified in my mind. I have talked with Mr. Fraley, and I know things. My son was brought up to tell me the truth no matter what happened in his life. I told Mr. Fraley something that he didn't know, that when all of this happened, that they first left and went to Miami. That was not known. That was not known. So my son has told me, he called me after all this happened, said he was coming to Olathe, Kansas, where we lived, that he would turn himself into the authorities. That's what happened. So he has told the truth.
I understand.
Now, and I understand what he's done in this situation. I understand that. He should have stuck with it in the first place and united, but he didn't.
Okay. What we're trying to figure out today is, how can I make your son most comfortable coming in and speaking to us under oath? Because we've never gotten him to give full testimony under oath, so that's what we're going for today.
Just ask him to tell you the truth.
Okay. All right, I will do that. And
Tell him to ask you to tell you the truth as he would tell it to his mother.
I was planning on mentioning his mother in my little presentation that I've worked up,
But-
so
and
I'm glad you're supportive of
That's
that.
fine, and he was supportive of us being here. We're supportive of him. Yes, this whole thing was wrong. There's been a lot of grief in both directions. And another thing that played into the part of the upset on that phone call, that was also the anniversary time of a death of another son of mine and his wife by a drunk driver. And so emotions were already high with me. And so if the court would forgive that, I would hope they would, but
I'm sorry to hear that, and you have nothing to be forgiven because you didn't do anything wrong, and I don't want you to get the impression that we were saying you did anything
and
wrong.
another thing
Yes.
that's important for me to bring up
Okay.
is that when Jack talked to me about that, is he said, Mom, one of the things I had in mind was Jim Dailey's mother, because you're a mother and he has a mother. So I hope that there is understanding of that, because he does care.
Okay. Well, let's see what happens. And you're listed as a witness, so I have a feeling you're going to get to tell your whole story today as well if we get past that first part where we get your son to talk, okay?
Okay.
All right.
He
Thank you
better
for being
talk or he'll be in trouble with me.
Huh?
He better talk sooner or he'll be in trouble with me.
I understand. I may mention that as well, okay?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay. Unless anybody has any other ideas, I'm ready to bring him in here and give it a shot.
Can I give a brief opening, Your Honor?
I'm going to give an opening before we're even going to find out what's going to be able to be said.
Yes, Your Honor. Judge Quesada gave the opportunity. I would like to.
Sir, I was going to give you all an opportunity, but it just seems like we ought to know whether we're going to hear from Mr. Pearcy or not, because your opening could be really long, or you could cut out some parts, right?
It's going to be short either way, 10 minutes.
Did you say short and then 10 minutes?
I thought that from lawyer speak, that's short.
All right, I'll concede that point. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor.
May it please the court and Your Honor. In the early morning hours of May 6, 1985, Shelly Boggio was violently murdered on the bank of the Intercoastal Waterway. Your Honor, it is clear on record evidence and what you will hear today that in a drug and alcohol-induced rage, that Jack Percy, a man who indeed had a history of violent crimes, including crimes against women, stabbed Shelly Boggio to death and dumped her body in the water. her life was tragically cut short at the hands of a violent criminal. And Your Honor, Jack Percy and Jack Percy alone committed this awful crime. So I say to Your Honor, I say to all assembled here today, this is an innocent man. Who sat on Florida's death row the better part of 33 years for a crime he did not commit. Suffocating in the eventuality that the state of Florida would take his life for a crime he did not commit. Jack Percy, who you will hear today, who had been implicated in a murder for hire scheme in the past and pinned it on his co-defendant in that case. A murder for hire scheme, Your Honor, where he took money to murder someone. And to him, it didn't matter whether he knifed him, his words, or shot him. There never has been, there never will be any direct evidence that my client, Mr. James Dailey, committed this crime. No physical evidence. Nobody that saw him with the victim alone during the time frame that the state argued at his trial, Miss Boggio was murdered. Your Honor, he had no motive whatsoever to hurt a hair on Miss Boggio's head. So after Jack Percy gets convicted, sentenced to death, detectives go into the Pinellas County Jail and they launch into, to put it kindly, a fishing expedition, plucking people out of their cells and saying, have you heard anything? Has this man confessed to you, James Dailey? And they get nothing. Inmate after inmate tells them, James Dailey never said a word about committing this crime. So they center their case, and the trial against Jack Percy on what we now know is perhaps one of the most disgraceful jailhouse snitches this state has ever seen. And he tells this ridiculous story of how James Dailey is moseying past his cell, a known snitch, and then turns to him and words or something and says, hey, by the way, I killed that girl.
Your Honor, I'm going to object at this time. I know it's opening statement. This is what he expects to prove, but I know what the claim is. And the last 5 minutes, he hasn't mentioned anything that he expects to prove that goes to the claim that has been granted in this particular case.
He's getting to it, and I understand your objection. I'm going to let him go because he's got 4 more minutes on his 10 minutes. Keep going.
And wet pants. They say wet pants. And you're going to hear today that James Dailey is picked up 6 months later, and he knows that the Mr. Pearcy's girlfriend and a friend of Mr. Pearcy's have said, well, he had wet pants. And he could have done what a guilty person would do and say, they're lying. My pants weren't wet, because certainly they've dried by now, right? And what he does is he lives with what the state would characterize as an inconvenient fact. Why? Because it's the truth. And he believes if he tells the truth, it will be believed. And who is the first person ever that has gone on record and said, you know how he got his pants wet? It was at the Bel Air Causeway. Jack Percy. Jack Percy. Your Honor, they proceeded on a theory that we now know as the result of this deposition is demonstrably false. Jack Percy, not knowing what he was doing and not knowing that I have damning proof, has admitted under oath, where the state had an opportunity to cross-examine him in a deposition just a few weeks ago, that he was with the victim alone during the exact time that their own medical examiner says Miss Boggio was killed. And so he told the truth to me in a thoughtful, emotional moment When I went to visit him, he didn't know me. I told him all I want is the truth. He got emotional. He even shed a tear, and he told me he cannot die for something that I did. He told me he would come over here and tell him the truth and tell the truth.
Hold on a second, counselor. Are you going to be a witness in this case? Because it sounds like you're testifying now.
I'm not testifying. I'm going to ask him questions as to what he told me and what he said.
All these things that he denied during his deposition?
Yes?
Okay. So you're going to ask him if he told you these things, and you expect he's going to say, no, I didn't tell you these things?
I'm going to see.
Do you have any good faith basis to believe that he's going to tell you that he said any of these things?
I think that he might.
All right, keep going.
And Your Honor, he has confessed over and over and over again, and every time he confesses, he finds a way to wiggle out. You are going to hear, Your Honor, in his own words today, on those tape-recorded calls, he tells his mother, I'll kill it. His words, not mine, talking about this proceeding, that he will just change his mind again and kill it. Your Honor, he can no longer play games with our system of criminal justice in this man's life. He cannot kill it. Because whether he takes the fifth today or he doesn't, that testimony is admissible, and if it comes up, I will argue to you how. It is absolutely as admissible as prior testimony.
Under State v. Dailey from last year, didn't the Florida Supreme Court say no?
Your Honor, I would raise, should I make the argument now?
You don't have to.
I'll wait.
We'll save it, see what happens. But there's literally a Supreme Court case with Mr. Daly's name on it that says otherwise.
I respectfully disagree, and we can take it up.
All right, we'll hear it. We'll hear it in a minute.
And I can tell you, Your Honor, that this easily constitutes new evidence, that it certainly, had the trial court known, and it was unknown to the trial court, certainly to counsel and the parties, that he would have admitted and certainly would have produced an acquittal. And it makes no difference if he now comes in here and says, oh, but I changed my mind now. Now Dailey did it, because that goes to his credibility, not its admissibility. And we not only have that new confession signed under the penalty of perjury, a declaration that he signed, we also have new details that he adds. Now he had sex with his wife in the bathroom that night. Now he gives details about, oh, well, the lie detector examiner in the deposition, that the lie detector examiner is lying.
Again, we're not addressing a particular claim, and we're going into evidence that is clearly is not going to be admissible and cannot be used as substantive evidence.
I understand what you're saying. Overruled. The opening statements are opening statements. I'll hear the rest of your opening statement. We'll see if the state wants to give one, and then let's get to the headliner and see if Mr. Pearcy's going to testify.
He has now admitted, Your Honor, under oath, where the state had the opportunity to cross-examine him. We now have under oath the only eyewitness in this case, Jack Percy, in his own words, saying, I and I alone was alone with Shelly Boggio from 1:30 to 3:30, because he has no idea that what we have are records, phone records of when a critical phone call was made by Oza Shaw that show that he has falsely testified in the past, has Mr. Pearcy, that he actually dropped Oza Shaw off at 11:30 because he knows what the state's theory is. Well, Your Honor, they say it takes a long time, but sometimes the truth catches up to the lie. And now we have phone records to put that lie finally to rest for good.
Okay.
And I would ask Your Honor, at the end of this case, at the end of this proceeding, to let the truth be heard. The Florida Rules of Evidence dictates it. All we ask, the time for sympathy for James Dailey is far gone. He doesn't ask for anyone's sympathy. All he wants is justice. And I submit to you, Your Honor, that if you simply apply the rules and the law, that justice is what we'll get. A full and fair hearing where we can once and for all present the cumulative evidence of Mr. Dailey's innocence to this court to consider. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. State, do you wish to give an opening, or do you want to reserve until we see whether we're actually having Mr. Pearcy testify?
Prefer the latter. I have no idea what we're going to hear from Mr. Pearcy, so I had no idea what was mentioned to the court.
All right, I'll let you reserve until close of the defense case. Defense has one witness, or are you planning on calling more after Mr. Pearcy if he testifies?
Well, depends how it goes. We may be calling one of their witnesses.
All right. Well, what I'll do is I'll let you reserve to the close of Mr. Pearcy's testimony. We'll see if he testifies, because sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. You know, something that came up there, you pronounced the victim's name two separate ways, Boggio and Boggio. Is there a member of the family here that can tell me what the correct pronunciation is? How do I pronounce it correctly? Boggio. All right.
My apologies to the court, especially.
No problem. And I've heard it pronounced very many ways, but with a last name like Syracuse, you can imagine I've heard my name pronounced about a million ways too. And I always assume everybody's trying to get it correct, and I want to try and get it correct when we're speaking about the young lady. All right, so when we do this, I'm going to have Mr. Pearcy stand at the podium and face me rather than put him in the witness box when I try and discuss with him is the idea that he's going to testify today. And the reason I'm going to do that is I think if he's focused on the audience and looking at the attorneys, that's going to influence him and distract him on his decision. So I'll have him stand there at the podium while I talk to him. And I'm making just a couple more notes of things to talk to him about here.
Your Honor, can we invoke the roll, please, and ask the silent excuse me?
Sure you want to do that? Having her here might help get her son to testify, at least initially.
And then everyone from the witness list need to leave. I don't remember who's on the witness list.
We only listed Jack Percy.
Yeah, it's
All right, I tell you what, if you want to invoke the rule,
Unless Your Honor would like Ms. Simon to talk to him first.
I was going to have her talk to him, but if he asks for her or asks about him or about her, what I was thinking about doing was being able to give him the option of, I'll let your mom be in here when you testify, or if you'd rather have your mom not be in here, I'll have your mom not be in here, because I'm trying to maximize your client's opportunity to get to hear from this witness. So that's the way I figure is the best way to maximize it, because if he says, no, I want mom to step out, I'll have mom step out. If he says, no, mom being in here is good with me, if it makes him feel better and gives us a better chance of getting the testimony, then why not leave him in, or leave her in? But it's up to you. If you want a moment to talk and to talk to your client, you absolutely have the right to invoke the rule, and I don't want the record to reflect that I was preventing you from doing it. I'm just trying to facilitate getting what you've told me you want, which is Mr. Pearcy to testify. What are your thoughts, Counselor?
It might be less awkward if she leaves the room before you ask whether he wants her here or not.
Okay, that's a good point. Thank you. I like that. Ma'am, I might be asking you to come back in, but for just a moment, I'm going to ask if you would step outside while I start to talk to your son. And if he wants you to come back in, it sounds like everybody's okay with you coming back in, okay? All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Your Honor, we're just going to excuse the other witnesses that were on the list.
Okay. All right, I've made all my notes to take my best run at him. State, any last words of advice before I take a shot at this?
No, Your Honor.
Defense, any last word of advice before I take a shot at this? All right, let's bring him in and take him to the podium. Ready for it. Hey, does anybody know, did Judge Quesada have his hearing in this courtroom the last time, or did he have it someplace else? So the original trial, though, that started here, correct? This room was here 37 years ago, wasn't it? Sir? No, 35. It wasn't even 35 years ago? All right.
Straight out, and start to turn right, follow over that way.
Mr. Pearcy? Mr. Pearcy, good morning, sir. Oh, can we close that laptop? I don't know if that's...
Sorry, grab it.
No problem.
May I, Your Honor, grab
Yeah,
it?
you can grab it, yep.
Go around. Sir?
All right. Sorry about that, Mr. Pearson. Good morning, sir. My name is Pat Syracuse. Welcome back to Pinellas County. I know it's been a long time since you were in this room, if you were ever in this room. I know Judge Quesada had a different courtroom down the way, but this is the courtroom I've got for today. I don't remember if your original trial back 30 plus years ago would have been in this room, or was it in another room? Do you remember?
No, sir, I don't remember.
You don't remember? Okay. Well, since 2 years ago, the last time you were brought to Pinellas County for a court case, Judge Quesada is retired. I think he's actually even moved out of town. So I'm here now. My name is Pat Syracuse. I'm the circuit court judge that's now assigned to the post-conviction case involving Mr. Dailey. Now, Judge Pennick, the original judge on your case, you probably already heard, he's passed away. He's no longer here. Beverly Andrews, the prosecutor that was in charge of your case, she's retired. She's not here anymore. And John Halliday, he's long gone from the sheriff's office. And I believe Joan Woods, the medical examiner on your case, she's passed away. But here we are 35 years later, 35 years after your conviction. And I want to talk to you about some of the events that bring us all here today. During the last 6 months, because that's about how long I've been assigned this case, I've been, reading a lot of documents. I read a lot of court records, heard the attorney's arguments a lot, and I even looked at some photos, and I read your deposition from 2 weeks ago. Today, it's my hope to hear from somebody that was actually around and involved in the events that bring us here. I mean, you're one of the original people. Most of the other people on this case are, we read about it, but we weren't participating in your trial. We weren't participating in Mr. Dailey's trial. You, sir, though, you've been on this from the very beginning. Now, I'm not here to pass judgment on you in any way, sir. That's, got nothing to do with what we're here to do today. I know you've had attorneys talk to you. I know you've had investigators talk to you. I know you've had judges talk to you about everything from perjury charges to parole hearings to contempt over the years. I'm not going to treat you like an idiot. I'm not going to be disrespectful to you and pretend that there's any way I can threaten you into testifying. It's not what I'm here to do today. And you know that, so there wouldn't be any point, right? Okay. So, in preparing for today, some of the things I did was I read your depots and I listened to some of your calls from your mom. I'm sorry that I got in a position where I had to do that. It's never my intention to unnecessarily insert myself into people's private lives. You're on your way doing your thing here. I know you're in prison, but you should still be treated with respect, the same as anybody else. And your mom certainly doesn't deserve to be disrespected by having people eavesdrop on her. But it's part of the system and it's part of what we're doing. So I had to listen, and I listened. Now, listening to your phone calls with your mom, and I actually only listened to 2 of them, but listening to your phone calls with your mom, I think it might have even been the last 2 from a couple weeks ago, and reading all your deposition stuff, I took 3 things away, 3 observations away from that. The first one is that, well, as I already told you, there's no point in trying to threaten you with contempt or perjury or any of that nonsense. And we've already figured out the parole commission's not going to let you go. You know that. So I'm not going to do that. Second thing I figured out is you feel very strongly that law enforcement didn't give you a fair shake 35 years ago. I get that. I do. And I hear your concerns on that. And I read your concerns extensively. Like I told you, Halliday's not here. He's gone. Andrews, she's not here. She's gone. I don't know whether you had much of a grievance with Judge Pennick, but he's gone. And certainly Joan Woods isn't around anymore. They're all gone. And you're still here 35 years later. I brought you here today to ask you, isn't today finally the day for you to tell the world your story from the witness stand, as a witness, as it could have been 35 years ago, but as we're asking you to be here today. And I'm asking you as a gentleman. The third thing that I took from listening to your phone calls with your mom, the third thing that I took from reading your depo was, you don't consider yourself to be a bad person. Your family visits you, supports you, you talk to them like a gentleman, you appear to be polite to me, never seen you do or say or heard you do or say anything that's outside of the bounds of being a gentleman. And you made several times the observation in police reports over the years, in your deposition, that drugs and a lifestyle back in 1985 brought you into a position where you didn't want to be. You felt like you didn't belong. That wasn't the lifestyle you wanted. The drugs that you were doing weren't helping you and put you in a bad spot. You're not on drugs now. You had a lot of time to reflect. 3.5 decades. If you're a good person at heart, that's what I want to appeal to today. You know that your mom's here because she told you she was going to be here. I had her step out of the courtroom today before I talked to you because, again, I don't want to put you in an awkward spot in front of her, and this is the spot we've got, so probably doesn't get any more awkward than this, right? If you want, I can let her come back into the courtroom when you testify. If you don't want her to be in the courtroom when you testify, I won't have her in the courtroom when you testify. It'd be my goal to make this as easy for you to do as possible, because we've all been waiting a long time to hear from you. But, if you do decide to testify, each side's going to get you a chance to ask any questions. Now here's the thing, you don't know me. Like I said, I'm a new judge on this case. I feel very strongly that each person, when they take the witness stand, should be treated like a person deserving of respect, because each person is deserving of respect. If you testify, I know you've been accused of some terrible things over the years. I know bad allegations have been thrown around. Nobody gets disrespected in my courtroom because I will advocate for them. So nobody's going to be unpleasant to you. They're going to ask you questions. You answer the questions, no problem. If you don't answer the questions, I'll try to contain everybody, but you know how that goes. You've been in courtrooms before, so you've seen it. If you feel like Joan Woods and Detective Halliday were the kind of bad people that lied on you 35 years ago, today's your day to set the record straight. Today's your day to tell the truth to both sides. Give everybody an opportunity to hear, and I would suggest to you that you have a responsibility to Shelly Boggio and her family to tell us what happened. You've always said, and you said it again just 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago on page 132 of your deposition, you said you wished you could do more, okay? Today's the day you can do more. Today is your chance. If you want to do more, you want to testify, you'll be treated with respect, the same respect every other witness gets, and it'll be your opportunity to be heard. So, what's your answer? You want to talk?
Yes, sir, I can testify. I won't bring Shelly back. Can't take away the pain from the family.
I understand.
In that statement I made, I said what happened. I made an original statement when I turned myself in.
I don't want to get into it yet.
Okay, well, at the end of that statement, I said 3 hours, we done questions asked and answered. They asked everything they wanted. And at the end, I said exactly what happened, that I didn't kill Shelly, whatnot, and that's all. I really don't plan on testifying any further.
I know you don't plan on testifying any further, but we've gone to a lot of trouble to arrange this, and I understand that you've made sworn statements, but you've made many sworn statements over the years, many that contradict with each other. Today I need to know the final truth. Today is when I want you to testify to what really happened. Now, I get it. It wouldn't be fun to do it in this room. It's awkward. There's lots of TVs. I get it. And nobody wants to. But you've told your mom and your family that comes to visit you, you're the good person in this story that's been wrong. If that's the case, you want to tell your story, I'm hopefully the good judge to give you the opportunity to demonstrate what happened. Like I said, I'm new here, so help me out, you know? I mean, everybody's watching. Can you do me a solid and testify to that?
It's not going to change my situation whatsoever anyway.
Agreed. And a good person would accept what your situation is, and they would do what's right and take the witness stand and tell the truth. Now, I've already told you I'm not going to pretend that I'm going to call the parole commission for you. I'm not going to call them and say anything bad, and I'm not going to call them and say anything good. I'm not going to hold you in contempt, and I'm not going to threaten you with all that stuff, because it won't work. But if you're a good person, wouldn't a good person testify?
At this point in time, I don't feel that I need to. I didn't testify in my trial. I didn't testify in the depot for James Dailey, nor in his trial, and I'm not gonna testify against him now.
Okay. And is there anything I can say that persuade you to testify? How about this? If I let your mom talk to you, do you think she could help facilitate me getting you to testify?
No, I made it on mine.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to say that I'm going to accept that as your final answer, because I still want to talk to you a little bit more. As you can tell, I'm trying to be a persuasive guy here. I'm trying to help you get to the point where you can give us a couple hours of your time. I mean, you know, let's think about it. We brought you all the way down from state prison. We got everybody else here. What's 2 more hours of answering questions so that we can finally put this to rest? I mean, is that a problem? It's not going to hurt you.
Yeah, but I don't see his word will help anybody concerned that I need to.
Well, you said that you wanted to do something, and today's your chance. The Boggio family is here also, and they, I'm sure, would like to hear you testify the same way that I'm sure that your mother would want to hear you testify and tell the truth. And she even said that before I asked her to step out of the room. You know, do you have any questions about that?
No, sir, I don't. Like I stated, I can't help bring the family back, or the pain her family's already suffered. I don't want to testify any further.
Doesn't she deserve somebody telling the truth here in court?
And that's what you have right there. And in the original statement, when I turned myself in, all the forensic stuff backed it up. That's where Joan Wood started. All day come out with the one-line confession. All that was after. That original statement, all the forensic stuff that couldn't be changed, even Joan Wood trying to change from an autopsy, all that came later. But everything backed up that statement.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It sounds like these are stuff that you'd like to tell us about, and I know that I read it, but again, you've been reading on Florida law and thinking about Florida law, and you participated in trials. You know that jurors and judges, we're supposed to evaluate the witnesses by seeing them in person, not just by reading their depositions. I appreciate that you were willing to give the deposition, but my question is, will you talk about it here in court where I can look you in the eye like a gentleman and I can listen to what you have to say? Are you willing to do that today? Okay. All right, I'm going to have you step in the back, and we'll bring you back out, because I'm not accepting that as your final answer, okay? Yeah, Mom can come back in. Well, any reason she can't? I might want to ask her some questions.
I mean, if we're going to bring her back and there's out of the
Okay, well, your motion, so I'm going to let the defense go first. You want a chance to talk about where you think I should go now, and if you've got a new line of thought that I could express to them, or a new line of approach that I can take, because I just pitched the good guy approach and that didn't work. So if you've got a Second Avenue, I'm willing to drive down it, but you look pretty resolute that he wasn't going to testify. You didn't get to look him in the eye. I did, but I wasn't seeing any nudge or hedge there. He did smile when I said I was going to bring it back out again, but that's about the best I got from him. So take 2 minutes, talk amongst yourselves, and see if you got anything else for him.
You can take just a brief break from Mr. Dailey and rest.
10-minute recess. So then on the phone, I'm just going to mute it. So